in 50 years, looking back, we will all humans who are still alive then will realize that this whole round of AI displacing jobs actually ended up being a really positive thing for humanity.
Kai-Fu, thank you so much for joining us here today. Your book is terrific, and it presents a incredible look at the current state of AI and where things are going. Mm-hmm. And you lay out 4 key tenets for figuring out which country or which group is going to control AI. And let me just read them off here. 1 is data. 2 is tenacious entrepreneurs. 3 is amazing AI engineers. And then 4 is supportive policy. Mm-hmm. And in each of these cases, you say it tips towards China.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious, you're spending a couple months in the US. Do you feel even more certain of China being the AI superpower? Do you think the US has a chance? Where do you stand now?
So US and China will co-lead the world in AI. And those 4 tenets start to tip things towards China, but that's for implementation. I think US is still way ahead in research and technology, and also some more advanced uses of AI, such as autonomous vehicles, robotics. So I think the 2 countries are comparable at this stage. But assuming no major big discoveries are made, Chinese power in implementation and just the magnitude of data will likely give China the edge.
In your book, you point out that AI tends towards monopolies. That the people that have the data are the ones who control the applications on that data. But you're a VC. You're funding all kinds of small companies who are starting up. So there must be something where you're saying, well, these guys are these small players, these kids in a garage somewhere in university, or people who are leaving a big company have some chance of getting ahead. How does that work?
Well, the monopolies will be monopolies in the spaces that they're in. Maybe not monopolies or someone with a very big market power. But the thing is, the current large, powerful AI companies are all internet companies. They don't necessarily have very strong positions in transportation, automotive, hospitality, healthcare, retail, banking, finance, etc. So we are largely funding entrepreneurs who are going into non-internet spaces with AI. So those are spaces where it's close to being a level playing field.
And in each of those spaces, you expect a few monopolies or controlling. This is a winner-take-all in each one of those spaces.
AI tends to be winner-take-all, but I think time will tell and also China tends to be winner-take-all. In the US, let's say the food delivery category, there's Yelp and Groupon and Grubhub and OpenTable. In China, if these 4 companies all existed doing what they did, they would eventually fight each other, and only one would survive. And it's a little difference between China and US. So I think AI tends to form powerful or monopolies, and China tends to have strong competition, which also tends to end up with either consolidation or one company beating the other, becoming the giant or the monopoly.
You make a big deal in the book about the cultural differences between China and the US, or really between the China tech world and Silicon Valley. Yeah. And the tenacity of the entrepreneurs in China and the willingness to chase profit and market share and change plans all the time to be able to get to success. Is that a way of doing business in China, or is it a stage of life in China?
Well, there have certainly been some tenacious American companies, so I don't want to overly stereotype, and I'm sure there are some mild Chinese companies. But by and large, China's tenacity comes from a number of factors. I think one from having been poor for many decades or even centuries. And some families have high expectations. And I think young people have a lot of expectations, and they're hungry for success. I think the work ethic is very, very strong. I think the environment, because there has been, not much anymore, but there has been a copycat environment, given everyone can potentially copy everyone else. That causes companies to want to be very, very tenacious and build up very high walls so other companies can't come in. So, Meituan built a 600,000 delivering army. DD is buying gas stations and car repair shops. All of those are trying to create a vertical protection so that competitors can't come in. If you want to compete against Meituan's delivering army, well, first get a few $1 billion. If you want to compete against DD, well, they're not going to let their driver carry a second app like Uber allows Lyft.
Right.
So it's just tougher competition. Will that change? I think some cultural elements will change. I think there will be less tenacity as there's a larger middle class. But I think some of the ways of doing business and some of the playbooks of success perhaps will not change.
Eric Schmidt recently talked about a bifurcation of the internet, of a China-led internet and a US-led internet. Do you buy into that?
To the extent that he means Chinese software and the usage of software driven countries, perhaps China, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, I would agree. To the extent that he means different regulations, I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Your book paints a pretty bleak portrait of what life is like once AI reaches its full potential. 40 to 50% of all jobs are able to be done by robots. They won't necessarily be done by them, but they're able to perform that. You really think AI is a fundamentally different revolution, and those jobs aren't coming back?
Those jobs aren't coming back, but we got to create new ones, right? I think
Can they be created at the scale that we need?
Well, that's the question. I think I gave my ideas, and other people have other ideas. Hopefully, in aggregate, it's enough, and we probably don't have to cover 100%. Maybe some of the new jobs are part-time jobs, and maybe some of them are covered by social welfare. Maybe there's some degree of early retirement. So it doesn't have to be 1-to-1, but it can't be 1-to-0.
Right.
So I think as I mentioned in the book, the jobs that require human-to-human skill, compassion, empathy, trust, are difficult for AI and robots to do. And that would suggest jobs that are from nannies and nurses and elderly care to teachers and maybe the future of doctors, and as well as tourists, concierge, and so on. It's a pretty large group. Some of them are growing. Elderly care surely is growing because the jobs aren't being filled now. There are like 1 million jobs open. And also, as we live longer, there will be greater need for elderly care. People over 80 need 5 times as much care as those between 60 and 80. So the need will increase in some of these categories. And also, as the society has more money, many of the new wealthy will want to have service that comes with entertainment for travel and Michelin restaurants and luxury brands. So those will create jobs there as well. And finally, there will be the AI jobs, right? The jobs we can only imagine: data scientists, AI engineers, Python engineers. But I'm sure there will be 100 other jobs over time. But I don't think in the next 5 to 8 years they'll all appear. If you give us maybe 40, 50 years, I think AI will end up creating a whole new set of jobs, just like most of humanity used to be in agriculture, and suddenly it shifted to manufacturing. I think just give enough time, new jobs will come out.
So as we're waiting for the new jobs to come out, your daughter's in college right now. What do you tell her? What are you hoping she'll study?
Well, she's already studying art, photography, and my older daughter was studying fashion design. What's important about that is, first, they're pursuing what they love, and I think that's what the future will hold. Is that as AI does more of the routine jobs, we should get to do the things that we love. And secondly, they're doing creative job, which is arguably not so easily replicable by AI. And thirdly, both of them are learning that communication with other people is very important.